Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of PowerShell Bytes. Today's episode is part 4 in a series on managing users on macOS, and throughout this series we've been building on a PowerShell module that contains a bunch of PowerShell functions to do various user tasks. On episode 15, which was part 1, we created a function that retrieved user accounts that are on your system with their various user properties on the Mac. On episode 16, we created a function that allowed you to create new user accounts. And on episode 17, we created 2 functions that help with removing existing users on your Mac. And in today's episode, we're going to be focusing on managing existing users and changing their various user properties, such as their password, maybe their picture, making them an admin account or a standard account, things like that. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the code. Okay, we're going to go ahead and build the Set-LocalUser Advanced function here. I'm in Visual Studio Code here. Again, we'll use the snippet here to create that. And we have a bunch of different parameters, pretty much the same ones that we used for the new local user to create one. Okay, these are all the different parameters that we'll use, and we'll go ahead and get rid of this begin and end script block because we don't need them. And all the work we're going to do here is inside this process block. The first thing we need to do, just like the other advanced functions that we built, is loop through all the contents of this name variable, since there could be one or more values. So we'll use a standard for each loop here, and we'll go in name. And then we'll go ahead and start building this out. So for each of these variables here that the user could possibly add input, we're going to check if they supplied a value. And if they supplied a value, we'll go ahead and run the DSCL command to change that attribute. And if they don't provide anything here, we won't run any backend command for that. So we'll start here with the display name. Just check if that's been used. And then we'll go ahead and use the same DSL command that we used in the new local user. We'll just pass that in variable for the user. They call the display name the real name, at least what I'm calling the display name. That takes care of that one, and if they didn't provide a display name, it'll go ahead and skip over this. So we'll do this for each one of these here. And again for the hint. Now just keep in mind the DSCL command here is case sensitive, so we have to put these, what they call the record name, basically the properties of the users, they are case sensitive, so you need to make sure that if it needs the lowercase h, you need to put the lowercase, or it won't work. Go ahead and do the picture path. That is lowercase. So the last part here, we're going to check to see if they used one of these switches, either the admin switch or standard switch. And what these are is if they use an admin switch, it'll make that user account an admin account, which basically just adds that user to the admin group. And if you use a standard switch, it'll make it a standard user account, and it will remove the current user from the admin group, and then thus making it in just a standard account. Now I need to make a correction on episode 16 when I made the new local user commandlet or advanced function. I actually did it incorrectly. Some people on the internet kind of googling around did it the way I did it at first in that video, but after doing a little bit more research and finding out what Apple does when you create an account through the GUI, it's done slightly different. So I'm going to cover that real quick. So first we'll go ahead and check to see if they use the admin switch here. And if they did, we'll use a different command, a different native command on Mac called ds-edit-group. And we'll make the option edit. And you can look up the man page for this if you want to find out more about that. We're going to make an append, I believe that's what the A stand for the user account with a variable that the variable n is. And then we're going to go ahead and add that user account to the admin group. Now this is a little bit cryptic. Again, just go ahead and check out the man page. It'll become a little bit more clear. But this command right here will go ahead and add the user that's passed in here to the admin group. Now if they use the standard switch, we'll go ahead and remove their account from the admin group. And the only thing that's different here is instead of A, we'll put D, and that will remove the user. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the change that I made in the new LocalUser Advanced function that I made in episode 16, and I think it's pretty important. So here in the commented out section is what I had originally in that episode. And basically what happened is if they use the admin switch parameter, I set that user primary group ID to 80, which is the admin group. And if they didn't, I set the primary group ID to 20, which is the staff group, which is basically a standard user account. Now this seemed to work and it created an admin account or just a standard user account. However, after doing a little bit more research and kind of seeing how Apple does it, how Apple creates an account when you create one through the GUI, I found out it's a little bit different. So if you create an account through the GUI, just a standard user account, it'll make all the users primary group ID of 20, which is a staff group. And if you go ahead and click the checkbox to make it an administrator, it actually just adds that user to the admin group. So I think that's the correct way to do it, and there could be potential problems in doing it the way I showed in episode 16. So just want to point that out. So in this other way, I did the same thing. I made all the users part of the staff group, and then if they use the admin switch, I basically added their account to that admin group. So you go back here, there's a few more things we need to do. So one thing you might be thinking, at least that I thought, is hey, well, they could use the admin switch and the standard switch at the same time, and that doesn't really make sense. And the way this is coded, it would always make that account a standard account if they did that. But these are pretty much mutually exclusive. You can only use one. You can't use admin and standard, at least it should be. So there's a really easy built-in way to handle this in PowerShell, and that's by making different parameter sets. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So we'll just type in parameter, and then we'll go ahead and set the parameter set name equal to, and you can make this whatever. I'm going to call this the admin parameter set, and I'm just going to copy and paste, and we'll just call this, say, the standard. All these other parameters where I didn't specify a parameter set, if I don't specify them, basically they belong to both of these parameter sets, which makes sense. So basically there's one parameter set that would include all these parameters right here, and the other one would include all these parameters and the standard. So you could use the advanced function in one of two ways. Now what I do need to do is set a default parameter set that is required. So if I come up here to cmdlet binding, I can type in default parameter set name. Now I could really set this to anything. There really doesn't matter. If I look up this advanced function using the get help, it'll show the first parameter set on top. But I could make them either one. It doesn't matter. These aren't mandatory parameters, so it doesn't really matter. Now I do want to make the name variable here mandatory. So we'll go ahead and do that. And go ahead and accept pipeline input as well here. We'll accept pipeline by both formats here, by property name and by value. Okay, so fix that here. Okay, that should be good. So the next part, we'll go ahead and test this out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and sudo into PowerShell to elevate our privileges, or we will get a bunch of access denied errors. So the first step we need to do is import that module that we created. Now ideally, once we have this module all set up, we would go ahead and put it into a specific location, and it would automatically load this, so we wouldn't have to manually import this every time. So I want to first take a look at the get local user function here, and this will pull all the user accounts in, and I want to show a couple accounts that I have set up so we can test this. Now I created two accounts here called test1 and test2. They have, all the different attributes set. And I did add a couple new user properties or attributes here, primary group ID and hint for the get local user function, so we can see some of this. Now what we won't see, which I'll have to show in the GUI, is the group membership. At some point in time in the future, I'll modify this to also show all the groups that each user is a part of, but for now it just supplies the primary group ID, which is currently for these users is the staff group ID. So clear the screen here. So we'll go ahead and use the SetLocalUser function that we created, and we'll provide the name test1. We'll change the display name here. We'll go ahead and say count1. We can go ahead and change the hint as well. We'll say Nunya, and we'll leave the password the same. And one thing I need to show you real quick is the membership. Currently, test1 user is part of the admin group, and I just want to show you here in the GUI real quick. If you go over here, you'll see test1 account admin, test2 account standard. So let me bring this back up here. And we'll go ahead and make this a standard account. And we'll go ahead and leave the picture the same, but this should test most of it. So we'll run this. And if I run the get local user again, and you'll see right here, it indeed changed the hint there to Nunya. It changed the display name to account1, and if I were to log out, you could see all this in the GUI. But to save time, I won't do that. And we'll go ahead and, if you notice that the test2 account, jump back over to the GUI here, was a standard user account. And we'll go ahead and run that and make him a admin account just to make sure that works. So we'll go ahead and change the test2 account to an admin account. Just do name test2, and we'll make him an admin account because he's currently a standard user. Run that, and I could use get local user test2, but this won't actually show the show that he's an admin account. So I actually have to show that in the GUI until I can change the get local user function to show that information. So if I go here now, I may have to close this GUI part out and reopen it to show that. This is running in a VM right now, and it's running extremely slow. Okay, so if you see test2 account here, it's now an admin account, and it's pretty much that simple. Now you could expand upon this. There is some changes here I would probably make. Right now, if I don't provide, these are not positional parameters since I have multiple parameter sets, so I need to set their position. If I wanted to, for instance, not supply the parameter name and just provide a user, I need to do a couple things there. But for the most part, this is working, and it's pretty straightforward. So in this episode, we just built an advanced function to set existing user properties, such as their passwords and things like that. In the next episode, we're going to go ahead and bring all these different parts in the series together and kind of show you how this will work as far as managing users on your Mac. And then we'll go ahead and put this module into a special location. So when you launch PowerShell, the module will automatically be loaded into your session. So you won't have to fool around with manually importing the module every time. So anyways, thank you for watching.